So now let's start with our company audit revision part 1. In this part 1 revision, we are going to be doing our mainly 6 sections. Okay, so which are the 6 sections? Let us go for that. First, we'll be doing 139, 140, 141, 142. We have 144 and section 177. Okay, so 6 sections one by one with all the subsections. Let us revise it properly. Please, revision means you have to repeat with me, you have to revise properly and repeat it properly. So the first thing I have here is 141, which deals with eligibility, qualifications and disqualification of auditors. So 141 deals with eligibility. Who is eligible to be an auditor? So according to 141.1, an individual can be the auditor of a company, individual person, if he is a chartered accountant holding a COP. Chartered accountant means Indian Chartered Accountant holding a certificate of practice from ICAI. Secondly, what I have here is that in case of an individual, to over 141.2 says that in case of a firm, a partnership firm, right? A firm can be an auditor under 141.2 if majority of the partners practicing in India are eligible for appointment, means they are chartered accountants. So majority partners should be chartered accountants. So for that I have got, remember, I have to see more than 50% are CAs or no. CAs can be in partnership with other people also, like CAs, CMA, lawyers. But for being a company auditor, majority of the partners should be your chartered accountants. So if there is a firm with 4 CAs, 2 CS and 1 CMA, there are total 7 partners. 4 out of 7 is a majority, more than 50%. Yes, they can do company audit. But if there are 4 CAs, 2 CS and 2 CMA, then it will be 4 out of 8, which is 50%. It will not be majority. So then also you cannot be the auditor of companies. Okay, every company needs to get the audit done. It is compulsory. Okay, then comes to the point that if there is one CA, one CS, one CA, one CS, can they be the auditor of companies? No, they cannot, because majority. One CA, one CS, one CMA partners again cannot be, because 1 out of 3 partners is a CA, which is not more than 50%. It should be more than 50% majority. So in all these situations, I know that only for a firm to be appointed as auditor, majority of the partners in India should be practicing chartered accountants. That is one thing. Second thing is that whenever a firm is appointed as an auditor, very important, when a firm is appointed as an auditor, remember, or a LLP is also counted in the firm, is appointed as auditor, only CA partner can sign an act on behalf of the firm. This is clearly given. Okay, only a CA can be an auditor of a company. Only he is allowed to sign on behalf of the company as an auditor, on behalf of the partnership firm as a auditor. When I talk about LLP, remember LLPs also can be there, but LLP which is under my LLP Act 2008, only Indian LLPs are allowed to be your firm as a auditor. So that is what you have for a firm. I hope this is clear. So 141.1 and 141.2 deals with eligibility, who is qualified and eligible. But it may happen that a person is qualified but he is disqualified, in the sense he is qualified, he is a chartered accountant, but he is disqualified from being the auditor of the company. Why is he disqualified from being auditor of a particular company? Because he is disqualified by BOPI BRT CS. That is my technique. BOPI BRT CS. So let us understand what are these 9 points one by one. Who cannot be the auditor of the company? First, B, BOPI, body corporate, but body corporate other than LLP. LLP is allowed, okay, but other companies, private companies, public companies cannot be auditor of another company, because how can you give opinion, right? Opinion is given by a natural person, so that's why not allowed. So first, B, body corporate, not allowed. O, officer employee of that company. Officer means a director or key managerial personnel of that company, shadow director. All these people cannot be the auditor of that company. They will not be independent. P, a partner or employee of officer or employee of the company. So whoever is officer employee, like in my example, Mr. A was the employee of X Limited, right? So A to can't do audit because he's officer employee, he's disqualified under 141(3)(b). Whereas 141(3)(c) will not allow Mr. B, his partner, or Mr. C, his employee. They are also disqualified under 141(3)(c). So be careful. A, B, C, D, E we have go 141(3) till E points we have. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I till I points I have got this thing. Okay. I hope this is clear, right? So here we have got now 3. X Limited, Mr. A, Mr. B, officer, employee, partner or employee of officer or employee. BOP is over. I, indated. Indated is looking like 1 point. There are minimum 45 disqualifications here, because when I say indated, point number D, this is the biggest point I have, where a person or his partner or his relative is holding security or indated more than 5 lakh, or given guarantee for third person, security for third person more than 1 lakh. So directly you owe 5 lakh plus more than 5 lakh. It is not equal to, it is more than 5 lakh, or you are indirectly indebted for more than 1 lakh. Okay, so more than 5 lakh, more than 1 lakh, whichever is there. Okay, then in that case, for third person, indirectly indebtedness will be 1 lakh limit. So if you're indebted or holding this whatever amount, or holding security, equity shares, preference shares, debentures, derivatives, any security, okay, in which company? In that company, its holding company, its subsidiary company, its associate companies including JVs, and other fellow subsidiaries. Fellow subsidiaries, we are subsidiaries of the same holding company. Okay, so again the whole section very important. This is a person, his partner or his relative is holding any security or indebted more than 5 lakh, or given guarantee or security for third person more than 1 lakh to 5 companies. Company, holding, subsidiary, associate and fellow subsidiaries. Then that person cannot be the auditor of that company. Okay, so who is a relative here? Relative is as per Companies Act definition, and relative includes 10 people here. Okay, who are the people who are included in relative? Relative includes HH. First of all, though, it includes HH. What is HH? Husband, wife and HUF members. Okay, they are included in relative. HH. Then after that, go in order. Mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, son's wife and daughter's husband. Okay, so remember, these are the relatives who are counted. So if that relative or partner is, all those things in those 5 companies. Also, I've given you one example here. Let's say you're being appointed auditor of X Limited. So X Limited, you are being the auditor. You will check, okay, do I owe money to X? No. Have I given guarantee to X? No. Do I hold securities? No. Does my relative hold? No. My partner holds? No. You have to see all that for X. You have to see all those things for H holding, for S subsidiary, for A associate, and for Y the fellow subsidiaries, because we are all subsidiaries of H. So this is how you will be checking this. You have to check the disqualification for the whole group. You have to see. Okay. Here there is one exception, very very important exception which is given. That is, if we are talking about a relative can hold up to rupees 1 lakh face value in the company. Only in that company, the relative can hold up to 1 lakh face value. Securities can be held. This will not be disqualified. Okay, but you're holding how much? Face value of 1 lakh. Market value is not relevant. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. If the relative is holding more than 1 lakh, or they acquired by mistake more than 1 lakh, then 60 days time is given to take corrective action. So they can sell the shares, they can transfer the shares, whatever it be, that will be done. Okay, but remember, this is only for relative, that too in only that company. Not one relative, all relatives together. Not like mama can hold 1 lakh, papa can hold 1 lakh, didi can hold 1 lakh, brother can hold 1 lakh. No. All together can hold 1 lakh. Okay. And secondly, remember, you or your partner cannot hold even 1 rupee. So auditor or partner, even auditor, even partner. Okay. Auditor or his partner can hold nothing. Okay, auditor or his partner cannot hold even 1 rupee share. He will be disqualified straight away. For relative only, we have got that limit of 1 lakh. Okay, so remember that this is the exception. So BOPI, 4 points are over. Now we come to B. B is what? Business relationship. Okay, so this is point number E, that is 5th point. If the company, if a person or the firm is having business relationship, directly, indirectly, any business relationship which is for a commercial purpose, they have transactions with whom? With 5 plus 1. Company, holding, subsidiary, associate, fellow subsidiaries and subsidiaries of associate. So if there is any kind of business transactions with these companies, then again you can't be the auditor of that company. Okay, also here there is one important point, there are exceptions. Okay, so there are exceptions as per rule 10. Basically this entire section 141.3 is also dealing with rule 10. Okay, 141.3, wherever they say, you know, as per prescribed rules like 5 lakh limit, 1 lakh limit, all this is as per rule 10. So as per rule 10, there is an exception here. What is the exception for business relationship? Two exceptions. One, if you are giving those services which are allowed by the act, allowed by Companies Act, allowed by CA Act, then you can't say there is a business relationship, because that service, that thing is allowed by the law. Okay, so for example, I'm doing GST audit, I'm doing tax audit, then they tell me please do a statutory audit also under Companies Act. I'll say I can do it. I cannot say, oh, there is a business relationship, because that service is allowed for me. Secondly, there could be another situation where you are working, they are working the normal course of business at arm's length price. So it's normal market rate. So if you're getting the Reliance, you're getting the audit of, let's say, Reliance Jio, or you're getting the audit of Airtel, and you're already the Airtel card holder, of course you can still do the audit, because here you are having, they're doing it as a normal customer, and plus there is arm's length price, normal market rate, so you are exempt here. You can do that, this is no problem. Okay, so this is how you should remember. But yes, please be careful. If suppose they give you a question, confusing question, that they owe 5 lakh 2000 rupees, more than 5 lakh rupees they are owing for goods purchased in normal course of business, can you be the auditor? The answer is you cannot be the auditor, because though normal course of business you are dealing, that is okay, but you are indebted more than 5 lakh. Now, so then this point is not applicable, D point is applicable. Indebted more than 5 lakh is a problem. Indebtedness can be normal course, not in normal course, whatever. You can't be indebted to the company. Okay, so don't get confused and mix up two things. That's very important. So BOPI over, B over R. R, very easy point, relative. Okay, of that person. Relative of that person is a director or key managerial personnel or employee director of the company. So Mr. A, who is the CA, wants to go to do audit of a company B Limited, where his wife Mrs. A is a CEO or she's a director. Then in that case, no, A cannot be the auditor of that company. Independence is the simple reason. So that will be R point. BOP, B, R, T. T is very important, point 20, which is about ceiling limit, point number G. So auditor, okay, let me go like this. 20 companies. A person who is in full-time employment elsewhere, or who is already holding the ceiling limit of 20 company audits, cannot be the auditor of any more companies. Why is that so? Because ceiling limit is given. 20 companies is the maximum ceiling limit. Why there is a limit and why there's a maximum thing? Simple, because if there is too much of quantity of audits, then your quality will suffer. Okay, everyone should get work, all CAs should get work, and plus your work should be done properly. So there is this section which talks about your ceiling limit. So maximum 20 company audits you can do. So if you're already holding 20 company audits, or you are in full-time employment elsewhere, remember, you're also doing some other work, you're not full-time in practice, then we cannot take any audits in your name. Okay, so that is what they have. But this 20 limit excludes, this ceiling limit excludes pods. What are pods which are excluded in this limit? First, the private companies with PUC of less than 100 crore are here. Okay, so if your paid up capital is less than 100 crores, and very important, you have not defaulted in filing your returns and your accounts. If you have defaulted in filing your FS or annual returns, that means you are counted in that ceiling limit. Your company will be counted. So don't take any company, private company, which has defaulted in any of this. Otherwise, your ceiling limit will get over also. So ceiling limit excludes private companies with PUC less than 100 crores and who have not defaulted in accounts and returns. Secondly, we have OPC is not counted here, dormant is not counted here, and small companies are not counted in this limit. So you remember this is what 20 limit. Okay, so BOPI, BRT. Last 2 points we have CS. What is CS? C stands for convicted. If the auditor has been convicted, the CA has been convicted for a fraud and 10 years have not elapsed from the date of conviction, so 10 years he will be disqualified. So 10 years they have been disqualified, has been convicted. For 10 years you can't be auditor of any company, you are disqualified. Okay, and last test we have got is if they are giving section 144 services. Which are those services? OI, aim rate, we will see them separately. So if you are directly indirectly giving any of these services to the company or its holding or its subsidiary company, right? So giving services to who? To the company, holding or subsidiary company directly, indirectly, as per section 144, then you cannot be the auditor of that company because you cannot be independent. Which are those services? We will be seeing separately. Okay, so I hope you understood all these points: BOPI, BRT, CS. And yes, this is 141.3 ABCDEFGHI, and then after that I have got 141.4. What happens if after appointment you become disqualified? So then that is after appointment of auditor, if there is a disqualification under 141.3, he will vacate his office as auditor, and yes, it will be treated like a casual vacancy. So you cannot think that I can just take up the work, later on I will see. No, if you have taken up the work and later on you become disqualified, at that moment you have deemed to have vacated office, you have to leave the auditor's place because it is not allowed. Okay, so I hope this is clear. If after appointment anything happens, you shall vacate your office. This is casual vacancy. Who is relative? We have seen. We have got good examples here. We have done all these examples for illustrations. Please, whenever you are doing this, you just cover the answer, read the question, give the section, give the answer, and accordingly see if you're correct. Okay. Then ceiling number of audits, we already said 20 company audits per person is your ceiling limit. When I say 20 company audits, one thing you should remember, it is per person 20. Okay, 20 company audits per person. So if I am into partnership with one firm plus I'm doing my individual practice, okay, then all of it together I can take 20 audits. I can't take 20 or 20 or one more partnership firm I join 20, then no. Total I can take 20. How you want to divide your 20 is up to you. Okay, so this is what 20 company audits per person. Even if there is any joint audit, then that is counted full. So suppose we both are doing joint audit of one company, you will also count it as one audit, I will also count it as one audit. Okay, we will not count it half or something like that, it will be counted full. Okay, also they have to maintain a record of the assignments which we have taken up, right? The ceiling limit excludes pods, we already discussed that. And yes, there is another limit. This is the 20 company audit limit. Okay, there is another limit which I have, that is of tax audits, and that is 60 audits per person again. So 60 tax audits we can take. This limit is different from my statutory. This is only statutory audit limit. Okay, this is not got anything to do with internal audits or GST audits or tax audit. They are all different. This is only company statutory audit. You can take up maximum 20 companies. Also, when you see, you'll have to see one important thing I missed out. Only the partners who are there shall be taken, and elsewhere who is in employment will not be taken into account. So if there are 5 partners, 5 into 20, I can take up 100 company audits. Okay, you can take up 100 company audits. Even one partner can sign all. Huh? Signing is not a problem. Even one partner can sign all of them because he is signing on behalf of the firm. But how many number of what do you say, audits they can take up? 100 company audits. Okay. If one of the partners is in full-time employment elsewhere is working, then you can only take up 4 into 20, 80 company audit. So that you have to check properly and then you have to see it. Okay, so this is your ceiling limit 141.3G point. Okay. Then comes my next point, that is 144. Auditor is not allowed to render some services directly, indirectly to the company, to its holding or its subsidiary company. There are 9 services I have here. O, I, aim, raid. So O is other services which will be prescribed. Right now nothing is prescribed. I, internal audit. A, accounting services. uh, I again, investment advisory services. M, management services. And RAID, rendering outsourced financial services. A is your actuarial services. Again I, investment banking services. And D, designing the system, your internal control system and all designing will not be allowed. You can clearly understand why all this is, just to protect your independence. If you are designing the system, how will you give your opinion on IFC? If you are giving actuarial services, investment services and all that, you will not be independent. If you are doing the audit, you are doing the accounting, you are only doing the audit, it is self-review threat. Okay, so all these things which are internal auditor, same thing. You are reporting to management, how can you be independent? So management services and all which are considered, all of them come here, OI, aim, raid. Okay. Then if you were giving any other service before the audit, this act started, you can, close it by the end of the first year. That is over provision, not important. Yes, what is important, what I mean by directly, indirectly, for that you have to see, is this an individual? Auditor is individual person. If auditor is individual person, then in that case he himself cannot do the work, these OIM rate services. He cannot do it, his relative cannot do it, any other concerned person, any other entity which is under my influence, my control, under same brand or trademark also cannot do it. So I can't do it directly, and indirectly my partner I'm saying, indirectly my relative or my concerned person or any other entity under significant control, or my control or my influence, or trademark or brand name is common, nobody can do it. Okay. Similarly, when I talk about partnership firm also we cannot do it. Very clearly it's given in case of a partnership firm. Partnership firm to itself cannot do it, partners cannot do it, parent, subsidiary, associate, your relative is not given. A relative is only given for individual. Okay, so this is, you can say, a loophole in the law. Itself cannot do it, partners cannot do it, associate entities, any other entity. But yes, if there is a relative who is there, and your relative where your firm or partner can influence or control, then they also cannot do it. So though there is a small loophole, indirectly that loophole gets taken care of, because what you are saying here is that you are saying that where your partner or your firm can influence, can control, then they also cannot be counted, or where there is same name, trademark, brand name, whatever, all of this will not be allowed. Okay, so section 144 OI aim rate services, you can't give them, your directly you can't give it, your firm, your relative, your partner, all these people also cannot give it. To whom you cannot give? To the company, to its holding, or to its subsidiary company. Okay, so with this, section 144 is over. Basically 3 sections are over. Now I take you to my audit committee section. So there are some types of companies who need to form an audit committee. Audit committee is formed from the board of directors. Minimum 3 people from the board are taken and they form an audit committee. Audit committee section 177 applies to companies which are, one, which is listed companies. Okay, second, which are companies which are prescribed, where you have got public companies, only public companies, either with paid up capital of PLT, remember, paid up capital 10 crores or more, L, loans, borrowings, debentures, deposits of 10, then we have got 50 crores or more, and lastly we have got turnover of 100 crores or more. Remember, PLT 10 crore, 50 crore, 100 crores. And all this you have to see as per the last audited FS, as per last balance sheet. So if you are talking about the year 2020-21, you will have to see this for 31st March 20. Okay, so remember this. Okay, if you are seeing, what is the example we have here? Example, if you are in the year, if in year 2021, check this PLT for 31st March 20 FS. You will have to see, have they crossed it on that day? If yes, then from this year 2020-21 onwards, form an audit committee. That company should form an audit committee. Whenever there is an audit committee, remember, the appointment of auditors, for filling of casual vacancy, everywhere it will be as per recommendation of the audit committee. They will recommend the name of the auditor. That's why audit committee is important. Okay, so with this I'm done with my section 177. So basically, how many sections I'm done? I'm done with section 141. I'm done with 144. I'm done with 177. 3 sections over, 3 more to go. Okay, so next section I have is full section 139. 139 is a section which deals with appointment of auditors. In appointment of auditors, basically I have got this. Okay, appointment of first auditors, which we have first auditors for government companies, is governed by section 139 subsection 7. Who appoints government company auditors? CAG appoints them in within 60 days of registration, otherwise board within next 30 days, otherwise shareholders in extraordinary general meeting in 60 days. So 60, 30, 60, remember. In case of your other companies, first auditors will be appointed by board within 139.6 it is, board within 30 days of DOR, registration of company, otherwise shareholders in the EGM in 90 days. So 1390 it is. Whichever auditors are there, they will be holding office till the conclusion of the first AGM is what we have. Remember this. Okay. Now when I talk about subsequent auditor, second auditor, third auditor, fourth auditor, then we have got first for government companies, it is section 139.5. Who will appoint the auditor? CAG will appoint within 180 days of commencement of the financial year. And in case of normal companies, the members will be appointing, shareholders will be appointing in section 139.1. And there is a difference here. The government company auditor will be till the conclusion of the AGM. Always remember, the word conclusion is very important, and here it will be from conclusion of first AGM till 6th AGM, and so on. For 5 years you will keep appointing them. Who will appoint? Shareholders will appoint, and these shareholders, there is a special rule, a method, a procedure that they need to follow to appoint the auditors, which we will see in rule number 3 of your diagram. We will see that. Okay, this is your appointment of first auditor, subsequent auditors. Then I have got appointment in case of casual vacancy, 139.8. Same section I have for both, but there is one thing. In case of casual vacancy due to DDRO, death, disqualification, resignation, or any other reasons which are there, we can have the auditor appointed. Okay, who is going to appoint that auditor? It will be appointed in case of CAG will appoint within 30 days. In case of government company, if not, board will appoint within next 30 days. And then we have got for our other companies, it will be board will fill up vacancy, and if there's a resignation, then it will be approved by shareholders within 3 months. Whichever auditor is appointed here will continue till the conclusion of the next AGM. So very, very important is about the appointment of auditors. So let's go further. Now you have seen the appointment of auditor, first auditor, subsequent auditor, government companies, normal companies. We have this chart also. So section 139.7 is for government company first auditor. As we already saw all these things, I hope this is clear. Okay, remember, for government companies it's 60, 30, 60. First auditors for normal companies, it is 30 and then 90. Okay, so these are the small things. Till when they continue also you have to remember that. Same for subsequent auditors. In case of 139.1, they will be appointed from conclusion of first AGM till 6th AGM, and thereafter for every 5 years. Whereas for government companies 139.5, they will be appointed by CAG within 180 days of commencement till the conclusion of the AGM. Okay, so then we come to the manner and procedure of auditors appointment. So here we have got two possibilities. One is that the company is section 177 company, where audit committee is there, and audit committee is going to be the one who will recommend the name of the auditor. So audit committee will recommend, then board will be deciding whose name is to be put forward, and finally shareholders will be doing the appointment. Okay, so what are the possible situations, right? So audit committee is the one who is going to be, the recommendation will be done by them. The decision of whose name is to go forward is decided by the board of directors. Okay, so that is going to be by the BOD. So decision making is by the BOD, and the actual final appointment, okay, the final actual appointment, this is the main appointing or the final authority which is going to appoint. That decision is going to be of the shareholders, right? So these are the three things that we have to remember. So in the first situation, what happens is audit committee recommends the name of the auditor, board is satisfied, okay, then that name will be put forward, then shareholders will appoint. Over. What if board is not, the audit committee gives the name but board is not satisfied with the name, so they will send it back to the audit committee for their recommendation, reconsideration. If audit committee reconsiders and board is satisfied, very good. If they are not satisfied, or the problem is that they are disagreeing with each other, then board will be giving their own recommendation. They disagree, they give their own recommendation to the members. Why is that so? Because remember, my audit committee is just a baby of the board. So if board is finally saying something, then that will go. But yes, board will have to give the reasons why they rejected the recommendation of audit committee. They can give their name, but at the same time they will have to give the reasons. And yes, now the auditor will be appointed again by the members only. And if your company does not have an audit committee, then everything recommendation, the name putting forward will be by the board of directors, but the final appointing authority will always be members. No matter what happens, members only are going to appoint the auditor. That is very clear. Okay, so this is your rule number 3 that I have. Okay, then we go further to our casual vacancy. We have already learned that due to death, disqualification, resignation, or other reasons. Okay, if it's a government company, remember, in case of casual vacancy, government company, does not matter it is due to resignation or any other reason, it will be appointed by CAG only within 30 days, otherwise board within next 30 days. Very clearly that is given. But in case of normal companies, for resignation, it will be the what do you say, the shareholders will have to fix that appointment, or rather they will have to approve it within 3 months, whatever board has filled up. And for normal vacancy other than resignation, board will only fill up within 30 days, right? If now we have got some other small points like reappointment, normally the same auditor can be reappointed. Once his tenure is over, then he can be reappointed, provided he is not disqualified. Okay, so he can be appointed if he is not disqualified, he has not given a notice in writing of his unwillingness to be appointed, or a resolution has not been passed appointing somebody else as auditor, or specifically saying that this auditor shall not be reappointed. Okay, so this kind of thing we have to check. Also, if auditor is not appointed in the AGM, then 139(10) says that if auditor is not appointed in the AGM or reappointed in the AGM, then existing auditor will continue to be the auditor of the company. Okay. So next we have got is certificate and consent by the auditor. So before appointment, auditor has to give his certificate and his consent that he is ready to be appointed as the auditor. His consent is simply, I'm ready to be the auditor, and his certificate is about let P. Let P means, first of all, he will be telling about L, that is the limits, he is within the ceiling limit. E, that he is eligible, he is not disqualified. T, that he is within the term, the tenure that is there. Okay. And lastly, that is proceedings which are there against the firm, against the partner, against the auditor. The whole list will be given to the board in that consent and certificate letter. Okay, so once the auditor is appointed, then what happens after that? Then company will inform the auditor about his appointment and within 15 days they're going to file a form ADT1 with the registrar that this auditor has been appointed. That form ADT1 is to be filed within 15 days of his appointment. Okay. And other small provisions are there, like firm includes LLP, appointment includes reappointment, and wherever section 177 company is there, the recommendation will be coming from the audit committee of the auditor. Okay, so that's how it goes. And then we have got our rotation of auditors, which is applicable as per section 139(2). It applies to two companies which are there, two types of companies. One is listed companies. Here we have that. You can see. Okay. Rotation of auditors 139(2) applies to first listed companies, and then prescribed companies as per rule number 5. Prescribed companies for my rotation is unlisted public companies with paid up capital of 10 crores or more, private companies with paid up capital of 50 crores or more, and then we have got your Unlisted public companies paid up 10 crores or more, private companies paid up capital 50 or more, and all companies whose paid up capital is lower than the above limit but whose public borrowings, that is borrowings from banks, financial institutions, deposits, debentures, etc., basically public deposits and all, is more than 50 crores, then in any of these situations, any of 1, 2, 3 happens, they should have rotation of auditors. Also, it does not apply to OPC and small companies. This is what you have to remember. Okay. Then rotation of auditors, it depends on whether the auditor is an individual or it is a firm. Right? If the auditor is an individual person, right? Normal person is the auditor, then in that case, he will be appointed maximum for one term of 5 consecutive years. Only one term he can be appointed of 5 consecutive years. But if it is a firm, then they will be appointing it for him for 5 years consecutive term, 2 terms of 5 years. That means total 10 years we can appoint the auditor. In both cases, the cooling period will be 5 years. Then 5 years appoint, 5 years break, 5 years appoint, 5 years break for individuals, and for partnership firms, 5 year appoint, 10 years appoint, 5 years break, and so on. Okay, so this is how you have to do. When you are talking about this, you remember common partners not allowed. Okay, so if there's a common partnership firm, then in that case, this will not be allowed. They cannot be an auditor for 5 years at least. Second, we have to see if they're under the same network, same brand, same trademark, common control. Again, in that case, we cannot appoint the same auditors for 5 years for the same company. And third, we have to remember is again, when we have this incoming outgoing auditor, we have to see there is no connection whatsoever. If one person, one partner leaves the organization, leaves or retires from a firm where he had signed the audit of a company, okay, so let's say they were doing audit of X Limited and Mr. R has signed the X Limited's report and PQR is the firm. R has resigned from that firm and now he's joined another firm as a partner. Then that other firm also cannot be the auditor of X Limited for next 5 years. All those things we have to see. Basically, common partners, we have to be careful. Then we have to see where there is common brand name, same brand name, trademark, network not allowed. And if partner certified FS, retired, joined another firm, that other firm is also not eligible for 5 years as a auditor. So we have taken examples for all that. Then we also saw there is a grace period of 3 years when you have started this appointment. Okay, when you have to when this Act 2013 had come, suddenly they did not make it applicable that rotation will be immediately applicable. No, what they did was they have given a grace period of 3 years. So in that case, we have this example. If there is an individual auditor who has been the auditor of the company for last 12 years, right, before the Companies Act 2013 commenced, can that auditor continue? Auditor can continue though his 12 years are over because 3 years grace is allowed. Okay. What if the auditor had completed, let's say for example, individual auditor had completed, this is example number 1, this is example number 2. Individual auditor had completed 1 year. Okay. So in that case, will he take the grace period of 3 years? No, because if he's completed 1 year, anyways law allows him total 5 years. So then in that case, he will be taking 4 years more, he can be appointed, and therefore 5 years total he can take. Remember, I will be taking the grace period only when I don't have a remaining period. Okay, if I have remaining period of 4 years, then in that case I will choose 4 years. Why will I take your grace? Similarly, for partnership firm, you will have to see how many years are over. Okay, how many years they have been the auditor before 2013 commenced. So if before 2013 they have finished 8 years or 10 years or 12 years or 13, 20, 25 years also, then in that case I know I cannot take up more work, but then 3 years grace I can take and I will be doing that. But if they have completed only 4 years, suppose, okay, so that CA firm has completed only 4 years of audit, then in that case they can take up more. How many years now? 6 years. I will not take 3 years grace because total 10 years anyways I am allowed, so I will be taking 6 years. Okay, so remember this, how many more years you can appoint would be minimum 3 years, but it can be more than 3 years also depending on the total 10 years which are there. So this point not very valid because now 2013 Act has been applicable for many years now, but still institute has it, so we had to do it. In joint auditors also you can do like this. You can have one auditor for 5 years, next 5 years you can have two auditors, joint auditors. Then PQR 10 years are over, so next year you don't appoint him, but you can appoint another auditor. ABC is already there and XYZ is appointed. Now ABC also 10 years are over, then we can appoint in the next 15 year, in the next 5 years. Now we'll again appoint that original PQR, and XYZ can continue. So like this also you can be doing with joint auditors. This is what we have learned here. Okay. So rotation of auditors, you need to understand is to whom it is applicable, one thing. Second thing, when it is applicable, remember one more important thing, that if it is applicable, then the auditors will have to be changed. There should be a cooling period. There can be restrictions, right? There would be 3 years grace period which is given. Right of removal, right of resignation is not affected. We can have internal restrictions, like we can have that partner should be rotated after a certain number of years or something. That can be done by the members only. Members can tell the CA firm, see, we are appointing you for 5 plus 5 years, suppose you will have to every 3 years rotate the partner. This can be the case. Okay. And if audit committee is there, they will be recommending the name, otherwise board will be recommending the name, right? And remember, when there is a gap, the gap has to be at least of 5 years. A break has to be of 5 years. So cooling period is minimum 5 years, whereas my appointment period is maximum 5 or 10 years. Remember that. Okay. So if it happens that 4 years you have appointed the auditor, then 1 year you take a break and you say, now again I can appoint for 5 years, answer is no. Even if you have appointed 4 years, when you take a break, it has to be a break of 5 years. Compulsory 5 years break is there. So cooling period is minimum 5 years, which you have to understand. Okay. I think this is all we have done. We have taken a few examples also. Yes. Now going further to removal, resignation of the auditor. So we are done with 4 sections now. 139, 140 we will do now, 141 over, 144 over, and 177 over. Okay. So now we are going to our next section, 140, removal of the auditor, which has got 5 subsections. 140 subsection 1. We will go straight to our diagram. Okay, this is our diagram which we have here. 140 subsection 1 is removal of auditor before expiry of term. Before his term is expired, if you want to remove the auditor, it is not a very easy thing. Remember, this requires special resolution, but before that we need board resolution. The board resolution, once is done, within 30 days they will be taking CG approval in form ADT 2. Central government will give approval, then only you can remove the auditor, otherwise you cannot remove it. Once CG gives approval, within 60 days you have to hold the meeting. Okay, GM to be held within 60 days, and then they will be passing a special resolution, the shareholders, and then only they can remove the auditor. So it is not easy to remove the auditor before expiry. We need board resolution, we need CG approval, form ADT 2, we need special resolution, etc. This all procedure is given in 141, plus rule 7 of CAR also talks about this. Okay. Yes, and don't forget, one more point you can just add here. One more point you can add. Auditor should be given a reasonable opportunity of being heard. Auditor should be given reasonable opportunity of being heard. Before removing the auditor, give him an opportunity of being heard. And this should be before removal. Before removal, give him one chance of clearing his side of the story. So that's what you have to remember, of being heard. Then we have section 142 and 140 subsection 3, which deals with resignation by the auditor. So auditor can resign if he wants, that's not a problem. But whenever he resigns, he has to fill form ADT 3. Within 30 days of resignation, he has to fill the form ADT 3, giving the reasons and the facts of his resignation. And who does he give this form to? He gives this form to 1. The company, 2nd, the ROC, 3rd, government companies there, he also has to give it to CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General. So that is what you have to remember. If he doesn't do this, 140 subsection 3 gives you some penalties. The penalty is rupees 50,000 or rupees or the remuneration, whichever is lower, plus 500 per day for continuing failure, right, subject to a maximum of 5 lakh rupees. So even penalty has come in the exam. For this section you have to remember the penalty also. Okay, so this is what we have in resignation. Very simple, easy point, but important. Then comes my third part. Third part now is 140 subsection 4. Here we are talking about removal of auditor on expiry of term, where his term is over. Then in that case, there is going to be a procedure wherein a special notice has to be given by the company to the company. Who will give this special notice? 1% of the paid up capital who's holding, or voting power who's holding, or 5 lakh. Whoever is holding those many shares at least will have to give a notice to the company, special notice, that we want to remove this auditor or we don't want this auditor. They will give the notice to the company at least 14 days before the AGM. Okay, so members give the special notice to company at least 14 days before AGM. Then the company will be sending it to all the members at least 7 days before the AGM. Plus they will be sending it to even the retiring auditor. The notice will be given. So now special notice auditor gets a special right of representation. So representation rights means you are going to write a representation letter in writing that you are ready for being reappointing. You cannot use this as a marketing tool, otherwise ethics will be holding you responsible for this. So you will only simply state in a very short letter, don't exceed too much of length, write simple words that you are ready to be reappointed, you have given your best to the company and you will continue to do so. So give that in the letter, and that letter will be a representation letter. You will give the company, ask them to circulate to the members. Company should circulate to the members. If they do not circulate it, they will have to, one, give it to ROC, that letter, and second, they will have to read it in the meeting. If due to any reason a person who is aggrieved, who is suffered, who feels that auditor is misusing this right, company feels auditor is misusing the right, then they can apply to the tribunal that please restrict this right of the auditor. Auditor is doing this for publicity, auditor is doing wrong things, your auditor is abusing, auditor is misusing the right. So they can inform the tribunal. Tribunal will then curtail the right of the auditor. When they curtail the right of the auditor, means simple words, they are going to say, you cannot read it in the meeting, you cannot circulate it to the members, nothing can be done. The tribunal can restrict this right. Mention about this in the notice, send a copy to the members. If not sent, read it and file it with the registrar. And don't forget, tribunal can restrict this right. With this, my section 140 subsection 4 is over. Then the last section I have is 140 subsection 5, which is also a good diagram which I have. That tribunal can remove the auditor, or then there could be two possibilities here. One, tribunal themselves are doing it, or it is an application made by central government or by a concerned person that they want to change the auditors. Why they want to change the auditors? Because maybe the auditors have been involved in a fraud. So fraud, they have done collusion, they have come together with the management and all and done fraud. Something management and auditors are together in this fraud. If tribunal feels that suo moto, they feel it themselves, or application is made by CG for changing the auditors or some concerned person, then what will happen? If application is made by CG, yes, then within 15 days order that he will not be the auditor anymore, and now CG will appoint another auditor in his place. But no, if application is not made by CG, tribunal themselves have done it suo moto, or some concerned person has done the thing, then we can direct the company to change the auditor. And once the auditor who has been caught under this, or has been proven that tribunal has punished this auditor will be out from this company audit, no doubt, but for 5 years he will not be allowed to do audit of any other company. Plus he will be liable under section 447 also. So this is the very harsh punishment on the auditor, because obviously he was involved in the fraud, so it is not a good thing, and therefore auditor will be punished for this. I hope this is clear. So our 5 sections today are over. 139 appointment, 140 removal resignation, 141 qualification disqualification, 142 remuneration we are doing now, 144 we have finished with our services not allowed, OIM raid, and 6th and the last one 177 that we have finished. Okay, so 142 very easy section which deals with remuneration, fees of the auditor. Fees, obviously we are all interested in the fees, so fees will be fixed by the general meeting or as decided by the general meeting. Only first auditor fees are fixed by the board of directors, right? The BOD will be deciding the fees for first auditors. Fees includes the main fees as auditor. It does not include any other remuneration paid for other services. Okay, other things are not included here, only the normal fees which are there, which is included here. Your fees include the expenses, any other facility, but it does not include remuneration paid for other services like a GST audit or tax audit. These are other services. These are not counted in my remuneration. I will get separate fees for that. And Schedule 3 also requires that I show the breakup of the fees paid to the auditor, breakup of how much we are paying to them as an auditor for taxation, for company law, management, other services, out of pocket expenses like for conveyance, for maybe traveling, for hotel expenses of the auditor whose accommodation they have to bear because it's outstation audit, or food expenses of the auditor, all other out of pocket expenses and all will be also shown like separately. What is it we are paying to the auditor in different capacities? Okay, so this is how the remuneration 142 is. So that's all then. I hope you have properly got the revision. All sections, subsections we have done properly. Quickly let us see all the subsections once. Only the sections I am revising the numbers, that's it. First one we have got is 139, appointment of auditor. 139.1 deals with subsequent auditor, normal companies. 2 deals with rotation of auditors, 2, 3, 4. 5 deals, 139.5 deals with what? That deals with your auditor of subsequent auditors, government companies. 139.6, first auditor of normal companies. 139.7, first audit of government companies. Okay, 139.8, casual vacancy auditor. 139.9 and 10 we have got is 9 we have got those points which we have to see now, that what do you call it, that consent certificate, and when will you not reappoint the auditor, etc. Now when he is disqualified and all those things. And 139.10 which you have to remember is after appointment, if you become subject to any of the disqualifications you have deemed to have I think I goofed up. 139.10, if the AGM does not hold is not held in time, the existing auditor will continue. If the AGM is not held in time, existing auditor will continue to be the auditor of this company. Okay, so that will be the case. So 139 over 145 parts. First one, removal before expiry of term. Second, third, resignation and punishment for resignation. 140 subsection 4 is your removal on expiry of term, special notice, representation, etc. 140 subsection 5, removal or change by the tribunal on application of CG or tribunal themselves when fraud is involved. 5 years not allowed, and 447 liable. Over 141, 4 parts. 1 is eligibility for individual when he is a CA holding a COP. For a firm, majority of partners which are practicing in India eligible, who are chartered accountants, and only CA partner can sign. 140 subsection 3 I have got, which is about 141 subsection 3, which is about your disqualifications, BOPI, BRT, CS, ABCDEHI, we have got points. And last we have got 141.4, after appointment, if you become disqualified, then you have deemed to have vacated office, it will be a casual vacancy. 139.8 will be coming. So that is what your 140 is. 141 is. 142 remuneration we have done. 143 we have not yet finished. 144, what is 144 going to be? 144 is the services which you are not allowed to give directly, indirectly, OI, aim, raid. So that's about it. We have also revised all the sections and subsections. So that's all then. Keep smiling. Bye-bye. So let's continue now with our revision. We start with our company audit part 2 revision. First thing we have is rights of the auditor or powers of the auditor. Okay. So what are the powers of the auditor? We have got 9 powers of the auditor. Beautiful 4 girls. One by one we will see them and then we will revise the points. The first power, the first right I have is right of access to books of accounts and vouchers. Books, accounts, vouchers, bills, everything of the company, whatever I want, I should be getting that. As an auditor, it is my right to get access to the books of accounts, vouchers at all times. Means at normal business hours, whatever books and all they are maintaining, I have a right to get that. These books may be kept at the registered office or at any branches, or they could be at any other place. Wherever the books are kept, it is my right to get access to the same. Normally books are kept at the registered office, and if they want to be shifted, then the board resolution is passed, the ROC is informed, then the books can be shifted. Okay, so I have access to all these books. Not only that, I also have access to the subsidiaries and the associates books. Why? Because company is going to present consolidated financial statements, so in CFS we need that. Okay, so CFS, for that purpose, if you need to see the books and accounts and vouchers of subsidiaries, associate, joint ventures, you can also see that. That is also, you have access to this. Books and accounts means all kinds of books, whether financial books, statutory books, statistical books, memoranda, rough books, inventory books, inward, outward register, any book and every book, minutes book, secretarial records, all the books of accounts, you have access to that. Voucher means all the correspondence, letters, paperwork, documentation, anything to check the accuracy of the accounts. Auditor has full right of access. This is a absolute right with no conditions attached. Okay, you have got right of access to anything that you want. Second right you have is right to get information and explanation. So if there is any matter, any problem, any query, any question, auditor has full right to get information, explanation for that. Okay, so from the officers, from the employees, get information which is necessary for his performance of duties as an auditor. Okay, next I have got section 145. By the way, right of access to books is section 143(1). Then I have got right to sign the report, certify the report, and that is section 145. Here, what is my right? I can sign the report and it shall be signed only by the person appointed auditor. If a firm or LLP is appointed as the auditor, we know only CA partners can act and sign on behalf of the firm. Individual is appointed, only he can do it. And in case of a CA firm which is appointed, then we are going to have the CA partner who can authorize and sign on behalf of the firm. Okay, any document, every document which is to be signed by the auditor will be signed by this person. Okay, so section 145 is signing of the documents. Then 4 rights I have got for my general meeting. Remember, there are 4 rights for general meeting. Section 146 is my duties of rights as auditor in general meeting. First right I have is right to receive notice, right to receive all correspondence relating to general meeting. So I should get all the notices of general meeting, that is my shareholders meeting, whether extraordinary general meeting, whether or your annual general meeting. Any general meeting, it is my right to receive the notice and correspondence relating to that general meeting. Second right I have is right to attend the general meeting. I shall attend the general meeting. Shall means it is compulsory, it is mandatory. I may attend it myself, or I may attend through an authorized qualified representative. Authorized qualified representative means another CA can attend. But if I'm not able to attend, I can ask from exemption from the company. So company will be exempting. Okay, so this is what is my right of the auditor to attend general meeting. Okay, so second is attending GN. Third is I can read the qualifications in the general meeting. I can discuss the points or some major issues in the general meeting. Remember, this right is only in general meeting. I cannot go to board meeting saying I have a right, I have a right. You don't have a right in board meeting. You only have a right in general meetings. Okay, and fourth is your right to be heard, and heard only for those matters which concern you as an auditor. You can't just go and speak anything in the meeting. You can only speak relating to your matters which are relevant to the audit. Okay, so 4 rights we have got. First, right to get notice, correspondence relating to the GM, any GM. Second, we have got is right shall attend the GM, and you may do it yourself or you can do it through a CA representative, qualified person. And yes, company can exempt the auditor from attending the GM. So this is your right as well as duty to attend GM. The third one I have got is the right to read the qualifications observations in the GM. I can read it. It will be kept open for inspection. And whatever I'm reading, whatever I'm saying, it is a right of the auditor to be heard at the GM on any business which concerns him as an auditor. Only business related to the auditor. Okay. So these are my 4 rights relating to the general meeting. Next right is a very important basic right, but that I have a right to report to the members, right? That is why I've been appointed. So this is my duty also. It is my right also to report to the members on the accounts that I have seen. I have to give my opinion about the true and fair view of the FS, right? All that thing is going to be my right. Okay, so anything about true and fair view, I'm going to report about it. And last right I have is right to lien. Lien right means right to keep possession of clients' books and accounts. So clients, books, records, returns, whatever you have got clients, books and all, you can exercise the lien, means you can keep possession of those books. When you can keep the possession of the books, if 4 conditions are fulfilled. 1, it should belong to the client. Second, it should have come to the auditor by regular legal means. Third, auditor should have performed some work on that. Fourth, my fees should be outstanding. Okay, so 4 conditions are there. You can exercise your lien on client's books and documents subject to 4 conditions. 1, documents belong to the client. Second, they have come to the auditor's possession regular legal means, not irregular illegal means. Not that you have gone and stolen it in the night. No, you can't do all that. Work should have been performed on that, and yes, the fees should be outstanding. If all 4 conditions, you can exercise your right of lien. Okay, remember, but my CA ethics says that you should not do this because it is not very ethical or good on the part of the auditor, saying that you pay the fees, then I will give you the books. It's not very practical, it is not very ethical. And don't forget, when I say right of lien, you should also remember lien on working papers. Remember, lien is only on other person's property. Working papers are property of the auditor, and hence there is no lien on the working papers. Okay. So, beautiful 4 girls are my points relating to my rights. So, what are those 4 points? Beautiful means B, I have taken access to books of accounts, section 143(1). Then I have got beautiful 4G. 4G, GM related 4 points. Receive notice, attend GM, right to be heard in GM, read the qualifications and all in the GM. So these are my points in section 146 about GM. I is getting info and explanation. R is your right to report to members. L is right of lien, and S is sign the report, section 145. Okay. So this is what we have got 3 sections here. 143(1) access to books, 145 signing of the report, 146 the general meeting. So this is my rights of the auditor, powers of the auditor. Now we go to the duties of the auditor. Okay, so duties, we have got lots of duties. First we will go through the duties, then the memory techniques and the revision of all. So the first duty I have got is to make inquiry. Inquiry duty is also section 143(1). This is making inquiries, means you are asking questions. 6 questions you have to ask over here. These 6 questions, there are 2 special points. 1, if there is nothing to report, nothing, I'm satisfied with the inquiries, I have no problem, then I don't need to report. Only when I'm not satisfied, I have an issue, I have a problem, will I report about this. So the first point is report only when you have some comments on this. And second thing is, this section gets into the propriety of the business. This is one of the very few sections in law which tells the auditor to get into propriety. Propriety means what is good, what is bad, I am going to report about that. Okay. So these are the 2 special points in 143(1). What are the 2 special points? You make a report only when you find the answers to be adverse. Okay. If you are satisfied, there is no need to report. Also, second point what we have here is that auditor gets into propriety of the business as this is required by law. In chapter number 1, we had learned auditor normally does not get into propriety. I have to give my report on true and fair view, I will give that. But when do I get into propriety? When law requires, and this is the section which requires me to get into propriety. Okay, so this is what we have. Now, duties of the auditor to inquire. First duty is inquiry LB dips. What is LB dips? We have got 6 points over here. First, loans and advances made by the company. Loans and advances, secured loans made by the company. Are they secured properly? Are the terms prejudicial to the company? Prejudicial, harmful, bad for the company. So if they have given loans, company, are the terms proper? If not proper, auditor will report about it. Okay, so terms are prejudicial, harmful, bad for the company. For example, I told you, if there is no interest charge or low interest rate is charged or proper security is not taken for the loan, this will be bad for the company. We will report it. B, we have got our transactions which are merely book entries. Book entry transactions, not real transactions, not genuine, only they have been book entries. So best example, end of the year they want to show more sales, so only book entries they have booked sales, and then next year they have done returns. So these are only book entries. Okay, so book entries prejudicial, you are going to report about it. Then D is whether loans are shown as deposits. Okay, so this is my point, whether loans given are shown as deposits. So company might, try to show that they have given deposits, whereas actually they have given loans. So when a company gives loans, many questions come. Who you gave the loan, why you gave the loan, who authorized it, what are the terms and conditions, what is the security? Lots of questions come. So company might try to hide the loan as a deposit, because in deposit normally we don't ask so many questions. Deposits like, for taking a property on rent, or maybe electricity connection and all, you're taking giving a deposit. So company might try to hide the loan under deposits. So that's why if you see any loan given is shown as a deposit, you are going to report about it. So LB dips. D, I, if there are any investments of a company which are sold at a loss, lower price, you have sold it at a loss, we are going to report it, because investments, you are supposed to make profit from that, right? You are investing money, make profit, otherwise no profit no loss is also okay, but you are making losses. This is a serious thing, shareholders should know about it. But here there is an exception, that this is not an investment or banking company. Okay, because investment banking companies are anyways doing this regularly. They are also having rules and regulations, and it is a everyday business for them. So leaving those companies, any other companies selling the investments at a loss, we are going to report about it. Okay, so LBDIP, personal expenses are charged to revenue. If there's any personal expenses, directors expenses, personal expenses which are charged to the P&L, we are going to report about it. Okay, and last S I have got is where the company is showing shares are issued for cash. Okay, so it is the shares are issued for cash, that's why we have taken S. If shares are issued for cash, whether cash is actually received, and if cash is not received, then the position shown in the books is not misleading. So no problem, cash is not received, at least show it now. Even Schedule 3 requires me to disclose out of the above so many shares are issued for consideration other than cash. So if it is other than cash, at least disclose it. Don't say that it is issued for cash when cash is not received. So these are my LB tips, 6 points. Okay, loans advances given properly secured, terms are prejudicial. B, book entries are prejudicial. D, your loans are shown as deposits. I, investments sold at a loss except for banking insurance companies. P, personal expenses charged to revenue. And S, your what do you call it, shares are issued for cash, whether cash is received and position is not misleading. Remember, this section gets into propriety 1, and only reporting is required when you are not satisfied, you have any comments to make. So with this, 143.1 is over. 143.2, very easy duty to report. Report about what? Make and sign the report. So you have a duty to make a report to the members of the company. Remember, you are always making the report for the members, the owners, the shareholders. So what is your report on the accounts that you have seen, the FS that you have checked, whether they are shown in showing a true and fair view. So balance sheet shows a true and fair view of the state of affairs. See, this is what The state of affairs means we are talking about the balance sheet. Okay, so balance sheet is showing a true and fair view of the state of affairs. Hmm? So here you can write down true and fair view. This is the balance sheet. This is your statement of P&L, and this is your cash flow statement. So whether they are showing a true and fair view, we have to see, is it properly made, is the AFRF followed, etc. All of that will be coming in your duty to make a report. Same duty, this duty you saw in your rights also. Right to make report, right to report is my right. I can report whatever I want, and it is also my duty to report on the true and fair view of all these things. Okay, so 143.2 duty. 143.3 duty deals with assertions. Which assertions? There are some assertions specific that you have to report. Now the special part here is that you have to report these assertions, right? So 143.3, these matters have to be reported. Whether auditor is satisfied or not does not matter. You have to report. I have shown you reports of companies where we have seen principal assertions. Okay, so these are the main assertions. What auditor is stating in the report, he is going to state, oh, I read Baba. 10 points he is going to state. We'll do the technique later. Let's see the points normally. The first point, whether I have got all the information explanation to the best of my knowledge and belief were necessary for the audit. So whatever I wanted, I have got it. So tomorrow if something goes wrong, you cannot give the excuse, they didn't tell me, I don't know. You should ask them, you should get info, and if you're not getting the information, if not, give the details, give the effect of such information. So you are writing in the report that I have got all the information, explanation, signing on it. Your duty to get all that information, and if you are not getting it, please write it in the report. Okay, so one is this. Second that you have to talk is about the proper books are maintained by them. And not only that, whichever returns are received from the places or branches which you have not visited, at least quarterly returns should be received from those branches. You will have to see that. So proper returns are received or not, I will be checking here. Proper books are maintained, what we will see. Third, when there are branches, right, any branches are there and the report has been forwarded to the auditor, because someone else has done the branch audit report and that report has been forwarded to the auditor, how he has dealt with it in preparing his report. So how he has dealt with it is also what he has to say. Okay, then he has to give a very important point that the balance sheet, the P&L which have been made are agreeing with the books of accounts, right? Balance sheet, P&L, because I am signing on the balance sheet and P&L, and I am checking the accounts, the books of accounts, returns, etc. So returns are the annual returns which we file with ROC. So I have to see that whatever balance sheet P&L is showing is agreeing with the books of accounts which I have checked. Okay. Next I have to see whether they have complied with the accounting standards, whether AS, whether Ind AS, whether the FS, balance sheet, P&L, cash flow, everything is as per your accounting standards. Okay. Then I will be checking if there is any bad effect on the working of the company. Adverse means bad effect on the functioning. Something I have observed, something I have seen, some problems I have noticed, whether relating to their decisions or something which is there, which I think is bad for the company, I will report about it here. Adverse effect on the functioning, on the working of the company. Then I have got, if any director is disqualified under 164.2. Okay, 164 is a full section which deals with disqualification of directors. I have to report whether any director is disqualified under 164.2. Okay, then any qualifications, adverse remarks you have, issues you have, then that also you have to give on the accounts maintenance, other matters, whatever. Qualification, adverse remark, you have to report about it. Next, you have to report whether company has a proper IFC. IFC, internal financial controls. So auditor has to report upon IFC. Two things on IFC. One, is it adequate? Is it proper? And second, whether it is operating effectively. So effectiveness of the things. But yes, you don't have to report on IFC for all companies. There are some companies which are exempt from reporting on IFC. So auditor need not report on IFC for private companies. Private companies which is either a one-person company or a small company. Okay. So an OPC or a small company I will not report, or the company is having turnover of less than 50 crores as per your latest FS, and very important, and turnover less than 50, and the loans, when I say, they are loans from banks also, from financial institutions, and even from other body corporate. Yes, even other company, if you have taken a loan, even that will be counted. This is very special point in IFC reporting. So IFC reporting will not apply if this loan from banks, FIs or body corporate is less than 25 crores. So it's a very small company, loans are less than 25, your turnover is less than 50, then also we don't need to report on IFC. But yes, there is a condition here, very important. Exemption is only available if company has not defaulted in filing FS and annual return. So if the company has defaulted in any of the FS filing or annual return, then they will be not exempt, and auditor will have to report on the IFC for these companies. Okay, so we had made a very good chart over here. This was the chart. IFC reporting under 143I is not applicable for private companies which are either OPC or small company, or who has turnover of less than 50, and turnover should be as per latest FS, audited FS. So last year you can see, and very important, and the borrowings are from banks, FIs or body corporates less than 25 crore at any point of time during the financial year. So any point of time you will have to see this. Borrowings, loans can be, it was 27 crores, then it became 25 in the end. Still, this exemption will not be there, because at any point of time it should always be lesser than 25. So if it has exceeded that, then you have to report on IFC. Okay, so this is what we have in our 143 3I, and then we have got O other points. In other points we have got IPL. So now how do we remember 143.3? We have got a technique OI Raid Baba. Okay, so what is our technique? OI Raid Baba. We have got 10 points here in 143.3 assertions. These reporting auditor has to do. So what are these OI Raid Baba points? O is other matters. When I talk about other matters, it is your rule number 11 which is there of CAR. In that I have got IPL, three things. One is the delay in transferring money or amount to IEPF, Investor Education and Protection Fund. Government has got a IEPF, and in that, after 7 years, when dividend is not paid by the company, unclaimed dividend will be transferred to IEPF. And then after that, the government will use this money for educating investors, making them aware. So if the company is liable to transfer the amount to IPF, have they delayed in transferring the amount? P, we have to say if they have made proper provisions for the losses for derivative, all contracts which are outstanding. And L, please tell us or the impact of the litigations, the legal cases. All these things have to be reported. Okay, so IPL. OI, then I is whether you have got all the information, explanation necessary for the audit. Okay, I Raid. R, we have got reservations, qualifications of the report, what is it, how it is, you have to give that. A, adverse functioning of the company, you have to inform that. I is about your IFC reporting, which is not applicable to those companies. It's called IFC reporting with reference to financial statements. Okay, so IFC with reference to FS you have to report, except for those private companies which we saw. Okay, whether director is disqualified under 164(2). And Baba points, we have got first B, proper books are maintained. A point, we have got where the balance sheet PNL agree with the books, agreement point. Okay, books are maintained. Again B, the branch audit report was received by the main auditor, and how did he deal with it? That is my B point. And last point A is accounting standards have been followed in the financial statements preparation. Okay, whether AS, whether Ind AS, the company has complied with the accounting standards. So OI Raid Baba, these are my points. And with this, understand one more thing. Other matters is also covered, which is rule number 11. Okay, so or other matters also covered. And then I go to my next duty. Next duty I have got is Other matters covered. Okay, other matters as prescribed, rule number 11, IPL we have seen. Okay, now the next duty I have got is duty to report and give reasons for what. If there's any negative comment, any adverse remark, auditor has a problem in any of the points, he has to give his report. Okay, he has to give reasons why his, it is negative or what is a problem, give the reasons for that. That is there. Next duty I have got 143, 9 and 10, which deals with auditing standards. Auditor has a duty to follow the auditing standards. It is compulsory. Okay, and the auditing standards are in 3 stages. ICAI recommends the standards on auditing. NFRA is going to examine them. Okay, and central government is going to, at the 3rd stage, see the recommendations and prescribe the standards which are going to be applicable. So central government has the final authority. Okay, and one more important thing, till now all the standards which have been issued by institute have been notified by government. Okay, so these are 143, 9 and 10. Follow the duties or do your auditing standards, follow them. Next duty I have got is report on matters which central government has told. Extra additional reporting they have given. So any extra reporting government tells me, we have to fulfill it. So government has issued Caro under this. Okay, Caro 2020 has also come now. So government has issued Caro means what? Extra matters. 143.11 gives central government that they can direct through a special order what extra the report shall include. So this is extra reporting by the auditor. So we have seen audit reports of companies where auditor reports normal 143.3 plus reports on Caro. So my duty, if government gives anything extra, I have to report, and government has already issued Caro extra for me. So my duty to report on those points also. And then last duty is to report the frauds which are there. This we have learned in our fraud chapter. 2 types of frauds can be there. If fraud amount is more than 1 crore, then you will inform, the auditor will inform the board within 2 days of knowing about the fraud. Ask them about the reply, or tell them to reply about the fraud, give their comments on it within 45 days. If that is received, then you will tell the central government this is what with the report, this is the answer which board gave us. If they do not give, then also give that to the government that they have not informed us, not given us explanation. You will be sending this letter to central government to the secretary of MCA by registered post acknowledgement due or by speed post. Remember, form ADT 4 you're going to give this in. You're going to send them an email for this, right? And these rules will mutatis mutandis also apply to cost auditor, secretarial auditor, branch auditor. Mutatis mutandis means as it is. It will apply to them. So fraud reporting even applies to branch auditor. But if the amount of fraud is less than 1 crore, then you are going to inform the audit committee. Okay, or the board of directors. If audit committee, board of directors, what will you reply? You will tell them about the fraud, NAP, the nature of the fraud, the amount of the fraud, and the persons who are involved in the fraud. And the directors will have to write in their report about NAPA, the nature, the amount, the persons, and what action they have taken against this fraud. So this duty to report is 143.12 to 15, and rule number 13, which we have rule 13 of CAR. Yes, if you do not comply with this duty to report, there is a fine on the auditor from minimum fine 1 lakh to 25 lakh. So this procedure you have done in chapter number 5, rule number 13, and your 143.12. So these are my duties of the auditor. All duties are over. 2 special duties I have got is one for government companies. For government companies, there is special duties 143.5, 6 and 7. Okay. So this only applies to government companies like SAIL, BHEL, ONGC, right? Coal India, all government companies. I showed you report of Coal India also to understand how extra reporting and working comes for government companies. So what is the extra reporting and what is the extra working that comes for government companies? 143.5. CAG can, Comptroller Auditor General of India, he can direct the auditor, direct the manner in which the account should be audited, right? Plus I will have to submit my report to CAG also. I also have to write in that what directions they had given me, what action I took on it, what was the impact, etc. So they can give me directions under 143.5 CAG. I will have to write it in the report how I have followed the directions, what I have done, what actions I have taken, etc. So this is my first duty for government company. Second duty, when the CAG receives the report, the CAG has the authority, okay, within 60 days CAG from the date of the report, they can do two things. They can, one, get a supplementary audit done. Supplementary audit means an additional audit. Extra audit will be done. Supplementary audit by a concerned person. CAG will authorize a person who will come and do extra audit. Not only that, CAG can also comment on the report. Whatever CAG feels is important, he can comment, he can add some points, okay? And those comments, those additions, attachments, annexures, whatever CAG is giving extra will be sent to every person, right? Sent by the company to every person who gets the audited FS. It shall be placed in the members, in the AGM, etc. Okay, so he can not only do supplementary audit, he can also send comments to all the members through the company. And last, 143.7, he can order a test audit. After audit is over, a CAG person can come, do test checking here and there to see that auditor has done his work properly. So this only can be done for government companies, section 143.5, 6 and 7. I hope this is over, right? And then comes my last duty, that is duty for branch audits. So, you know, if a company has branch audits, right, they could be having branches in India or branches could be outside India, foreign branches. So any branch which the company has, they need to get the audit done. For branches in India, who can be the auditor? For branches in India, one, the auditor can be the auditor, the company auditor himself, or there can be another qualified CA who can be the branch auditor. Okay, so local CAs also, they can be the branch auditor, no problem. Second thing is, if the branch is outside India, foreign branches, and three people can be the auditor. Company auditor himself only can be the auditor, or another accountant can be there, or any other person who's qualified for appointment as per laws of that country. So this is a foreign branch. It is in some other country that they are having this, branch. So if suppose in US they are having it, so US CP also can be do the audit. Any person who's qualified as per the laws of that country can also be the auditor. So now, who can be the auditor? We saw that. Next, what is my duty? Okay, so duties and powers of the company auditor shall be as prescribed only. So that is rule number 12 they have given, where the duties on powers of the auditor is with reference to the audit of branch and all shall be as per 1 to 4 of 143. So the branch auditor will be having similar powers like my head office auditor, okay? But branch auditor has the powers in his particular branch. Plus in our 143 also we have seen that when the branch auditor gives the report to the head office auditor, you will have to deal with the report. How he has dealt with it, he has to report about it, right? So those duties which are already given there will be like kind of applicable even to the branch auditor. Even the fraud reporting which is there now, 143.12, will also apply to the branch auditor. So if he sees, the branch auditor sees a fraud in his branch, he also has to inform central government or board of directors depending on the amount of the fraud. So all these duties are there. Yes, branch auditor's report is going to be submitted to whom? The branch auditor shall prepare a report on the accounts. They will send it to the main auditor of the company, and the main auditor will deal with the report in whatever manner he considers it necessary. Okay, so all these things which are there we have to do. Remember, the similar duties even branch auditor has for the branch. Reporting of fraud also he has. He will make the report, give it to the main auditor, and main auditor's duty is to report whether he has received the branch audit report and how he has dealt with it. And these rules will be applicable, mutatis mutandis means as it is. It will also be applicable to cost auditor who is doing cost audit under 148, or secretary who is doing secretarial audit under 204. So the branch audit will also be applicable to these people as well. So with this, my duties are over. So we had got a small technique to remember the duties, which is section 143. Full duties are in 143 only. So I had given you this duties of the auditor, section 143, under 143 1, 2, 3 in order, ESA or GB, ACF. Okay, so I, duty to inquire, LB dips I have got over here, right? 6 questions, 6 duties we had seen over there. 143.2, duty to sign the report, that is my 143.2. Okay, so report, that is sign report, S. Then I have got A is your 143.3 assertions. We had got O, I, raid, Baba over there, right? So these were my 10 points. In that only I had got other matters, which is O point here, IPL points we had got. Then we have got 143.4, which is reasons for your qualifications or problems, ISA or. Then we have got GB, government companies 5, 6, 7. 5 is directions can be given by CAG, supplementary audit comments can be given, or test audit T. That is my 7th point. Okay, 143.7 I mean. And 143.8 is for branches, whatever relating to branches in 143.8. Then 143.9 and 10 relates to my standards on auditing. You have to follow your auditing standards. Any central government reporting, extra matters you have to report under 143.11. Under that we have got CARO. And the last point I have got is fraud reporting, which is under your 143.12 to 15. So you have to remember the sections in this order. Okay, so this is what all your duties are over now. So 143 section, 145 section, 146 section, 3 we have finished now. Okay, 2 more to go, 147 and 148. So come on, let's see 147. 147 is the punishments on the auditor, the penalties on the auditor. Okay, so punishment for contravening the law, not following the law. This is a blanket section. Common punishments are given. So if the company is not following section 139 to 146, okay, company is not following 139 to 146 both inclusive, then in that case the company can be fined with a fine of 25,000 to 5 lakh. Plus every officer in default will also be punished with imprisonment up to a year, 10,000 to 1 lakh fine, or with both. Okay. But more than important than this is on the auditor, what is the punishment? So auditor can be punished if he does not comply with section 139, 143, 144, 145, 148. What are those? 139, full appointment of auditor, rotation, appointment, all of that. 143, we just saw the duties and rights of the auditor. 144 is the services which you cannot give. Okay, IAM raid services. Okay, then 145 is about signing of the report, signing the report, and 148 is about the cost audit. So if the auditor is not following any of these sections, then he would be punished with a fine. Now his fine amount, okay, is very 25,000 to 5 lakh, but 5 lakh subject to 4 times the remuneration of the auditor, whichever is lower. But the same thing if the auditor is doing deliberately, willfully, he knows he is doing it wrong, okay, he is doing it purposely, knowingly, then the same thing, the punishment goes higher. Now the punishment, okay, doing it willfully with the intention to cheat whom? Cheat the creditors, tax authorities, government, company, or the shareholders, right? Anybody for that matter, you're trying to cheat, then the punishment is going to be imprisonment of 1 year, and it is, okay, very clearly, and there would be a fine is now going to be more, 50,000, maximum 25 lakh, or 8 times the remuneration, whichever is lower. Okay, so this will be from 4 times it becomes 8 times, from 25,000 it becomes 50, from 5 lakh it becomes 25 lakh, and most importantly he will be sent to jail also. So imprisonment and fine. Not only that, he has to refund the remuneration also, plus he has to pay damages. The central government can appoint a person, authority, to collect the damages and pay it to the right people. Why he has to pay damages? Because people have suffered due to his mistake. Okay, so this is a big punishment on the auditor. So you better do your work properly. You cannot take a risk now, because your everything, your fine is to be paid, jail, auditor, convicted, right? It is all very bad. So be very careful here. And yes, when we talk about this punishment, there is also one more thing here, that is about your measures to ensure prompt damage. That's okay. The joint and several liability, this is also important, that for the fine, the partner is also responsible and the firm is responsible jointly. Okay, so the auditor, the liability for the fine, everyone is going to bear, even the firm. But the criminal liability, okay, will be only of the partner concerned. So only the one who has done wrong will be facing the criminal charges and going to imprisonment, I mean going to jail. Okay, so in case of criminal liability of the firm, for liability other than fine, fine everyone is responsible, even the firm, but other than fine, only the concerned partner who did the fraud and who will be liable, and he only will be going to jail. So this is section 147, penalties. Okay, then we have got joint audit. Joint audit, when two or more auditors are appointed for doing the audit, it is a joint audit. SA 299 deals with the responsibilities for joint audit. Joint audit has got some advantages and some disadvantages. Advantages: sharing of four things. Sharing of expertise, we have got WECC, sharing of the workload, sharing of the expertise, sharing of the cost, and sharing of consultation. Mutually you can consult each other. Because of doing this, you can give better quality of the work and you can give better services to the client. So better quality, better services comes over here. Okay, so this is SA 299 which talks about it, and yes, these are my advantages. What are the disadvantages of joint audit? The biggest disadvantage is USD CCC. USD, first we have got is, it is very difficult to get the exact liability. Okay, who is responsible, that will be very uncertain. So uncertainty of liability, who is liable, who is responsible. Sharing of the fees will be one problem. Different standing, different ego issues, different opinions can be a problem. And C3, we have got 3C points. 1C, there is coordination issues between the auditors. Work is not properly divided, common concerns will be neglected, they will not do the work properly, because common areas he feels this auditor will do, I feel he will do it, it will be neglected and problematic. And lastly, there is no clear definition of responsibility. So advantages, disadvantages of joint audit also can come in your exam, so be careful about this. Okay, now going further, we have got the last section now, that is section 148. Okay, so 148 deals with cost records and cost audit. So section 148 first thing says that only central government, okay, central government can order which companies have to maintain cost records. Okay, so the order will be made by central government. And yes, those only companies which are prescribed, and they have prescribed rule number 3. What is rule 3 of my cost records and audit rule? So only those companies will have to do cost records. One. Secondly, they will maintain the cost records for material, labor, and overheads and other costs. If at all they are having some authority, regulatory authority, or there is some law relating to that, then we have to take permission of them also. Very simple example I'd given you here. Telecommunication is covered under cost records, and telecommunication has a regulatory authority, TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So if anything is being done with telecommunication, we have to consider TRAI also. So CG should consult with TRAI, right? CG shall consult with the regulatory body if it is formed under a special act and all, before giving anything under this order. So first thing we have got section 148, those companies which are prescribed will maintain cost records as per rule 3. Second we have got is cost audit. Now cost audit, when I talk about, then that will also be for prescribed companies only, and those companies will be as per rule number 4. Okay, so we have to see that also of CRA. Who appoints the cost auditor? Board of directors will appoint the cost auditor. Cost accountant will be appointed by the board, who will be in addition to 143 auditor. So statutory audit is different, cost audit is different, right? This auditor appointed under 139 shall not be appointed as the cost auditor. 139 means my regular auditor, stat auditor, cost auditor cannot be the same person. Remuneration will be as prescribed. The facilities and all shall be given to cost auditor. Only cost accountant in practice or a firm can be an auditor. Like we also, only a CA in practice or a firm of CAs, majority of CAs, like that only. Here only individuals and firms can be the auditor. they have to follow cost auditing standards which are issued by the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. The qualification, disqualifications and all will be similar. Even they are disqualified under BOPI BRTCS. They are also having duties and rights as 143 gives. So all of it will be similar. Okay. Cost audit report will be submitted to the board of directors, right, within 30 days of the getting the report. They have to give it to central government, a copy of the report and information explanation on the qualifications, right? So cost audit report, I told you it is form CRA 3. You can write it if you want. Cost audit report is form CRA 3 and the explanation and all is form CRA 4. Okay, fair enough. All that is given in my rule number 6 of CRA. Okay. Then if the company has an audit committee, it is under section 177. The recommendation of the name will come from the audit committee. Then the board will appoint. If company is not covered under 177, then board will only appoint the auditor and that's it. Okay. If the section 148 is contravened, then punishable will be same as per 147. Company also will be punished under 147 and every officer in default will be punished. Plus, if the cost auditor is doing something wrong, then he also will be punished under the same section 147. Same punishment we have got, same punishment they have got. Even Caro requires to report whether proper cost records are maintained by the company. So you have to report about that. Okay. So with this, my basic section 148 is over, but more important than the section are these rules which are there. So for rules, we will directly do it in the form of our chart which we have made. Okay, important charts we have made here. Okay, so first thing, rule number 3. So rule 3 is for cost records to be maintained. Who maintains cost records? Only those companies which are specified classes of companies. Okay, yeah. Rule 3 is for cost records to be maintained by specified companies who are in the business of our regulated sector or non-regulated sector. First, we will see, are they in this business? Yes, they are in the business. Then we will be seeing what is their overall annual turnover. Now, when I talk about overall annual turnover, remember, this overall annual turnover is from all the products, R, NR, O, all the turnover. All the products and services, have they exceeded 35 crores or more in the last year? Then from this year, they will start maintaining cost records. Remember, when they maintain cost records, once maintained, they have to always maintain the cost records. Okay, this is how it is. This rule does not apply to small and micro enterprises which are covered under the MSMEDA Act. Okay, so they don't have to maintain cost records because they're small micro enterprises. Okay, so now what is regulated sector? Regulated sector is FD Pets. We have got 6 companies or 6 entities who are doing either fertilizer business, or they are into drugs and pharma, they are into petroleum and gas, they are into electricity, telecommunication or sugar. Any of this business they are doing, then they are come under regulated sector, and we have to see that total turnover from all products and services 35 crores or more. Second, non-regulated, we have got many sectors. We have a big list of things. Only some we remember: RCTC SAT. So we remember rubbers, your cement, tea, coffee, steel, arms, ammunition, turbojets which are there. Okay, so all of them are covered here. And many more are also there. So first we will see, is the company having this business, R or NR, and then we will see if their turnover has crossed 35 crores from all the products and services. You have to check it, not only from that. So if I talk about a company, it is into business of coffee. Okay, it is also into business of sugar, coffee and software. 3 businesses they have. So they are into sugar, that means it is into regulated business, right? Then we will see turnover of all the 3 things: sugar, coffee and software. Is it 35 crores and above? Then they will maintain cost records for these 2 things. 2 things means sugar and your coffee. They will not maintain for your software. Okay, this is what you have to see: turnover from all the things. Then comes rule number 4. When is audit compulsory? So rule 4 says cost audit applicability is applicable to companies, right, who are maintaining cost records satisfying two conditions. But before that, my cost audit does not apply. Does not apply to whom? Let's see. It does not apply to, not applicable to any company whose export turnover is more than 75% of total turnover. So if they're exporting and their revenue from exports is 75%, or more than 75%, no cost audit for them. Or they are working from a SEZ, no cost audit for them. Or they are generating electricity in a power plant, but it is all for captive consumption, for their own consumption. So electricity generation, but for own consumption, own use, they also will not get cost audit done. Okay, so cost audit does not apply to these entities. One, it applies to, depending on the sector, it applies to regulated or non-regulated sector. So it may happen that they are into business of, I told you, sugar, coffee and software. So whether sugar, they will have to do cost audit. So well, that will depend. For sugar, I will have to see regulated sector. Their total turnover in the last year, total, when I say that means RNRO, total turnover, has it exceeded 50 crores in the last year. And very important, and their turnover of sugar and coffee, R and NR, has it exceeded 25 crores. You have to remember this, okay? 50 crore, 25 crore. When I see 50 limit, I have to see overall total turnover. When I see 25, I have to see only sugar and coffee. Okay. In my example, sugar, coffee and software business, one company is only doing. So this is what. And the same for NR, then I will have to see, okay, coffee, whether they have to do audit. Sugar, yes, they are crossing 50 crores. Yes, they are more than 25. Should I also do coffee audit? Well, that will depend on, again, if total turnover is 100 crores and above and the RNR turnover is 35 and above. It can happen in a company that only cost audit is done for the regulated, it is not happening for NR. This is possible. It is happening for both is also possible. It is not happening for both is also possible. You have to see it separately. So first see whether company maintains books properly. First, see whether they maintain books. Second, whether they have to maintain cost records, I mean. For that, you will see, are they into business of RNR anywhere? Yes. Last year's turnover total RNRO, is it 35 and above? Yes, maintain cost records. Second question, should we do cost audit? Well, that will depend on what? It will depend on the two conditions, right? What are the two conditions? Rule number 4 says, if at all their overall turnover is, for regulated sector, I have to see overall turnover of 50 plus 50 and above, and RNR turnover 25 and above. For NR, I have to see 100 crores and 35 crores. Both conditions fulfill. And so if I see in the beginning only that turnover is less than 50 crores, then forget now why you're seeing second condition. It's already less than 50. Neither will audit apply for R nor will it apply for NR. So you have to see properly and then decide it. Okay. I had given you lots of questions on this, and these questions, whenever you will be studying it, okay, these are the examples I gave you. You please, you cover up this, answer. This, what is this red part I have given? You cover it first. You see the situation and give the answer. I have also given you the reasoning over there because I know it is little confusing. So once you get it properly, one or two you do it once also properly, na, you will get it. And trust me, many students don't understand this. You will be very among the few students who understands this. Even CAs get confused here. But you are smart kids. You will not be confused. Okay. So with this, I'm done with my rule number 3 and 4 of CRA. Okay. What is the difference between statutory audit and cost audit? We just can see that also simple. Statutory audit is for all companies. This is only for your companies which are into business of R or NR. We have that list also. The section is 143, section 148. We follow auditing standards. They follow cost auditing standards. We are CA, they are CMA, cost accountants. We are cost auditor. No, you should write cost accountant. Cost and management accountant. Okay. So we report on true and fair view of the FS. They report on the costing records, how they are maintaining, or we are appointed by shareholders. They are appointed by the board of directors. 5 years we are appointed. They are appointed for 1 year. Our report is public report. Anybody can see it, but their report is private report, confidential report, which only board of directors and central government can see. Okay. So etc etc. We have got the points, easy ones, which are there. Appointment, remuneration, and all board decides here. Here it is all by the shareholders. Means for us it is shareholders, for them it is the board. Okay, we have got ADD forms and our CAAR, our car rules, which are there, and they have got CRA forms, and we have section 148 and CRA rules. One thing is still pending, rule number 6, which is there, rule number 5 and rule number 6. Now let us do that, and we have finished with our revision. Rule number 5 talks about the companies to whom this cost records rule 3 applies. They are supposed to maintain their books in which form? This is what they have. Okay, so every company to whom these rules apply, their branches and all have to maintain cost records in form CRA1. So the way that the cost records are maintained is form CRA1. Okay, so CRA1 is the format of your costing records, and everybody has to maintain. The company also has to maintain it. The branches also have to maintain it. Then cost audit, rule 6. First of all, appointment of cost auditor. Before appointment, okay, we need to get a certificate from the auditor, his consent. In certificate, they are going to have 4 major things. One is they are within the limit, they are eligible, they are not disqualified, the criteria under 141 is satisfied, and whatever proceedings are going on against the cost auditor or against the firm of the cost auditors or partners, all need to be given here. This has to be done before appointment. We have to take it from them in writing before appointment. Okay, so this is what we have here. And yes, the cost auditor is appointed within 180 days of commencement of the financial year. Very important, commencement of financial year. So if I'm talking of the year 2020-21, by September end, okay, of 2020, September 2020, this year only we are going to appoint within 180 days. So first is appointment, and appointment by board, remember. Second, what we have learnt is, in case of once the auditor is appointed, he has to be informed about his appointment, plus central government will be informed in form CRA2. When will CG be informed about the appointment in CRA2? When within 30 days of the board meeting or within 180 days of commencement of the year, whichever is earlier. Okay, so if it is within 30 days or maximum by 180 days of the financial year commencement. So September end of 2020 in my example. Tenure of the cost auditor till the report is submitted or till 180 days of the closure of the year now. So if I'm doing audit for 2020-21, 21 gets over on 31st March 21. So 180 days from there, maximum tenure, the auditor will be done. Okay, so this is his tenure. Again, tenure of the cost auditor over. If he is removed also, it can be removed by the board of directors. Again, they will appoint a new auditor, CRA2, they will inform the government. Right? Then if casual vacancy is there, again, like due to death or disqualification, resignation of the auditor, then again board will fill, and within 30 days they will inform government in CRA2. Okay, I hope this is clear. CRA2, 30 days of appointment. Even the first one, when auditor is appointed, also within in CRA2 will be filed within a period of 30 days of board meeting or 180 days of the commencement, whichever is earlier. I think we said that. Okay, so then this filing of vacancy over. Cost audit report will be submitted in form CRA2. Where will it be submitted? It will be submitted to the board of directors. Once board receives it, the board is going to submit it within 30 days now to the central government. Plus they will have to submit their answers to the qualifications auditor has made. See, my report has got 2 things. Okay, cost audit report is also there, plus there is reservation qualifications in form CRA3 will be given to the board of directors, right? Then once the board of directors will receive it. Acha, what is the maximum period by which you have to give this report? This will be maximum 180 days from closure of the financial year. Okay. Once they receive the report, within 30 days, they have to inform the government, give a copy of this report, plus give information about every qualification reservation in CRA 4. So 4 forms I have: CRA 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 are over. 1 is how the cost records are maintained. See here, this point. CRA 1, the format and how the cost records are maintained. CRA 2, appointment of cost auditor. Inform central government for normal appointment, or on removal new auditor is appointed, right? On removal for new auditor appointment, or for casual vacancy, anything happens, CRA 2 you have to file. And thirdly, CRA 3 is the cost audit report. And CRA 4 is now given by the board of directors for the explanation of every reservation qualification which has been made in the cost audit report. So who makes CRA 1? Company maintains in that format. CRA 2, company informs central government about appointment of auditor. CRA 3, auditor makes the report. And CRA 4, board of directors will be sending to the central government their information on the explanations and all that on the qualifications. Okay. So rule number 6, whatever we learned, we have it here in this diagram. This is the last diagram we have. See it properly. Board meeting will be there. Auditor will be appointed within 180 days of commencement of the financial year. Once auditor is appointed, company will inform the cost auditor and central government within 30 days of the board meeting or 180 days of commencement, whichever is earlier. How will you inform them? Inform CRA 2. Once the audit work is over, by the way, the tenure of the auditor will be till report submission or 180 days of closure of the year, whichever is earlier. Okay. So it looks a lot, but it's not difficult. See, it's either 30 days or 180 days. That's all which is going here. Okay. So 180 days from closure or submission, whichever is earlier. Submit the report to BOD within 180 days of close of the year. Inform CRA 3. And finally, give one copy within 30 days after you get the report. Furnish the central government copy of the report within 30 days of report, and also submit your explanation on the reservation qualifications, etc. in CRA 4. Okay, so this is what you have to do. All the things we have revised, entire company audit is now over, except Caro, of course. The whole revision is now done. Okay, so I hope you have understood everything properly. Just revise all the sections, subsections very well. This is a very, very important chapter. 100% you're going to get minimum 6 to even 20 marks can come from only this chapter. Okay, so do this properly. That's all. See you tomorrow. Bye bye, and keep smiling.